Okay, everybody, it's 2:30 on September 17th. We're having our meeting at the Montgomery County Board of Elections. We have a quorum here. Our election director is on personal business out in Nebraska, correct?
That's right.
She's in Nebraska? Okay.
I'll let you do it. Hello, Board of Elections.
Hello?
Hello, Margaret.
Hello?
Margaret.
Sounds like she's in a hurricane.
Margaret, can you hear us?
I hear you, Allison.
Well, it's Lisa.
You can call me Allison.
So we can hear you loud and clear. We actually hear some wind or something going on behind you. But
Yeah, it's a little windy here.
okay.
And the place I was going to go, they're vacuuming, so if you have a choice, sound effects of wind or vacuum.
Okay. Well, we're fine. I think everyone can hear you loud and clear.
Okay.
We'll just have to have people speak up.
Okay, Margaret, thanks for calling in. We know you're on a personal little hiatus, and we hope you're enjoying yourself. Thanks for calling in. Okay, so we have a quorum. We're going to begin our meeting. And the first item was July 16th minutes, but I'm informed that there's been some late suggestions, and Lisa, you think that we should put that over?
Yes, it was suggested that probably we lay them over for next month.
Because Kevin, you haven't looked at them either, correct?
I haven't seen them now.
Okay.
A movie table, July 16 minutes.
Okay. Any objection to that? Okay, so we'll table that. And now let's go to the minutes of June 18th, 2018.
Executive session.
These are the executive things. A move we accept the executive session of June 18,
As amended.
as amended. Yes.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in... Alex?
Yeah, Mr. President, I guess was there a suggested change in response to Mr. Namath's comment that we were going to put in? And that was...
In the executive session.
Oh, it was just the suggested
Yeah.
deferring, and that was the change, right?
I added one, and I realize this is for executive session minutes, I'm not going to say it in too explicitly, but I added one sentence, and then I deleted one word and changed
Okay.
changed it.
But we're voting on the June 18th minutes,
The June
right?
18th
Executive session.
executive session minutes.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
executive session.
Right. So that's what I'm
Yes.
talking about. Those were the when you said as amended, those were the two amendments.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
No one opposed?
A move to accept the executive session of July 4th. Was amendment?
As amended.
As amended.
I think that my suggested amendment to that would require someone to be more specific than what I was. I had a.
Yes.
What if we just listed him as, say, liaison to the county?
I actually changed it to say county liaison, if that's acceptable.
How about county executive liaison?
That would be fine.
That's fine.
That's
Okay.
fine.
That works for me.
So with that amendment, right?
Yes.
Any discussion? We have a motion and a second.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
No one opposed? Okay. Kevin, you did say that you wanted to have an executive session on a...
We need to have a brief executive session on a confidential voter request.
Okay. Lisa, is there any public comment?
Before you get to that,
Oh,
I'm going to have a new business item.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Any public comments?
No one has identified to address the board.
Okay. But we welcome our guests anyway. Welcome. Okay. All right, Margaret, you want to give us your election director reports? Or did you, or is Allison going to do it?
Presented in
On the
advance.
election director report, Allison is going to handle that portion of it, but I'm available for questions.
Okay. Allison?
So the biggest personnel issue that we are facing right now, the biggest personnel issue we face since I've been here certainly, is Margie Rower's retirement. Margie will be retiring effective October 1. We are working actively to fill her position to make sure we get the KSAs all as we need them to advertise the job. I know Margie doesn't want a bus maid, but I don't think you get to retire after 34 years with the county without anything being said in the record. And I do just want to note that you've made a really big impact on an office when it takes a lot of people stepping up to backfill your job. So even temporarily, we've got a lot of people who are taking on some new responsibilities, whose job responsibilities need to grow for them to be able to do some of these things that, that Margie has just done a tremendous job for years here for the county. There's a lot more that should be said. I'll, just sort of hold that, except to say that, Margie, brilliant, tremendous writer, fantastic in front of the camera, probably the most well-organized person I have ever met in my entire life, and she knows this county inside and out. The way some people are fluent in languages, Margie is fluent in Montgomery County government. And so it is just absolutely a tremendous loss, I know, certainly for Margaret, but really for all of us. Gilberto is taking on the duties of being the spokesperson, the PIO for the department. As you all know, certainly, Lisa has taken on a number of her role has really grown over the course of the last year, and I think she takes on new responsibilities every day. So Lisa has really been stepping up into a lot of new responsibilities. There's a variety of other people. Ryan White is taking on some expanded roles with some of the purchasing. There's a variety of different things that need to be done for all of the various different roles that Margie has performed in this office for years.
Who is taking on the budget?
The budget position, we're advertising. We're advertising for that.
But as we talk, though, who's responsible for that?
I am taking this opportunity to learn everything that I can about our department budget. So Margaret and I are working closely with the Office of Management and Budget to make sure that now the budget has been submitted, and so we're in sort of an interim stage here before the county executive's budget comes out the early part of next year. But that is something that Margaret and I are working with OMB on directly. Margaret, I heard you speak. Did you want to add something on that?
Yeah, just to allow the board to know that I will be the primary contact, as I generally am, with the Office of Management and Budget, but I am going to be working closely with Allison to, when we get the marks from the county executive, we will begin the process of meeting all the technical requirements that are necessary to submit the budget on a timely basis.
When you say you're advertising for that, has it been done yet? Has
No.
outreach?
Not yet. We are expecting that ad to go up by October 1.
Is that going to be a separate position?
Yes.
So it's
And
separate
just-
from communications?
Yes.
Yes, so it's just budget.
Yes.
And then what do you do with communications?
Gilberto is taking on those duties.
Acting.
Yes.
And are you advertising for that as well?
Gilberto, do you want to go?
We're going to try to include it in the job description. It's a kind of an unusual combination of talents. To have a budget person also be a public information officer.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Totally agree.
My question is, are you then going to do a separate advertisement for the communication position?
We
do not plan to do that because we're not budgeted for two separate positions. We are going to develop a position description that includes both talents.
I'm confused by that.
Yeah.
I think the reason this sounds confusing is because it's still in flux. We're still working through the department's needs, what we're going to be able to work with the Office of Management Budget, the Office of Human Resources to accomplish. I will just note that I don't want to gloss over the talents and history that Gilberto brings to the communication functions for this office. And so he and Margie have really been job sharing some of those duties for quite some time. And so, I am personally very focused on making sure that we get somebody in the budget position who has an essential skill set for the budget roles.
And that would be
and we're
full-time
working
or
through
part-time?
right now what full-time. So we're working through right now what talents the team is able to rise into and bring, to some of these functions.
So
There's a lot of things.
Margie did
staff
3
can do.
jobs, and she's retired, and we're going to hire somebody full-time to do one of her 3 jobs.
It was added. Each job was added. Her original job
understand
was
that, but
treasurer,
I'm trying
and
to
then
decide
it was added.
about that time allocation.
We're working through that. You're hearing as we talk it through the directions that we're going, and we're still working on that. Margie was here for 34 years. There's not another Margie, So I really think that a person that we hire this position is likely to have a much narrower job description than what Margie had taken on over time. Other people are stepping into some of these roles now that quite likely they will continue to perform, at least in some fashion.
And that, to me, speaking just for myself, that makes perfect sense. The part where I got kind of lost and confused was the idea of trying to have a position description that covers both budget and communications, because like you both said, and like we all agree, that's a difficult combination that not everyone has. If it turns out that a different person does budget from communications, that would just be normal. I mean, that's what most people do. So that was the part where I got a little bit confused, because obviously if you're hiring a budget officer to do budget, that's a very different hire than if you're hiring a budget officer to do budget and communications.
Has there been some thought, Allison, in the forthcoming fiscal year budget to actually ask for funding for a separate PIO position?
Really, that's not a full-time position.
Yeah, I don't know.
The future fiscal impact portion of the budget was submitted by the board. We certainly can ask for an amendment to that for the future, but at this point, we will need to wait for the new administration to come in.
I think it would be a good idea to have a separate position.
Well, yes, that was what was submitted, Margaret, but at the time we didn't have this situation with Margie's retirement. May I raise another issue? These 2 positions also, interestingly, have 2 committees with board involvement, the Budget Committee and the Communications Committee. And it sounds like maybe you're, rethinking the actual work of these positions. And I'm wondering if maybe a meeting with those committees, just a general sort of discussion. I know board doesn't get involved in, actual hirings, etc. But because this is all being sort of revamped, refocused, and whatnot, it might be something to consider.
Absolutely. Margaret,
So
you want
noted.
to comment on that?
What do you think?
So noted. We'll certainly be happy to discuss this with the board members, and obviously we don't want to, get in trouble with the open meetings law, but we'd certainly be happy to discuss that with the board members of the communications and budget committee prior to posting the job description.
That'd be great. Yeah, terrific. Thank you.
So you have both the fiscal 18 and fiscal 19 budget spreadsheets. Unfortunately, I do need to note, although Margie moved mountains to try to prevent this, we did end up with a surplus in fiscal 18, or, so it seems at this time, which is going to correspond to some expenses that we had to bear in fiscal 19 from the fact that the election is just so close to the end of the fiscal year, and there were certain expenses, particularly associated with the canvass, and and then of course we got into the recount, which of course took place in the new fiscal year. But there were expenses that Margie was working back and forth with the Office of Management and Budget to try to get paid out of fiscal 18 that we were unable to do. So we are in a position now where we are looking at having had a surplus in fiscal 18, but also having had a number of expenses that we bore early in fiscal 19 that were unbudgeted expenses. For the recount, I don't have a breakdown of that here in front of us, but there were certainly costs there. With, of course, the Legislative District 16 recount, the board picked up at county expense. We also have some expenses that, well, Margaret noted them in a later section of her director's report, but we have some expenses associated with the fact that we now have a 5-face ballot or a 3-card ballot for the general election, which was not a budgeted item. It means, of course, that we are going to spend more simply on purchasing the ballots themselves for that 3rd card. It means that we need to obtain some additional supplies, like those blue ballot bins, for the additional volumes of the ballots. We have needed to prepare to package 50% more pieces of paper for the general election for the ballots, and so we're going to have a little bit more. We're bringing in one more person in operations in the supply warehouse to correspond with that as well. So we have some unbudgeted personnel expenses that we'll just need to work through as the year proceeds.
Allison, I noticed on this the budget June 3rd through September 4th final. As I looked through, there were about 16 places where we had spent more than we had approved already, and am interested in, and that we only have $15,000 to spend on the sample ballot, which seems like not even close to enough. I wondered what the plan is to make up that overtime, as we've spent over. Group retirement, which was frightening. Program management, state board, some of it's state board things, but I marked, I think, like I said, about 16 places.
Jackie, where are we?
She said she's looking at the final.
The final.
The one that says final?
Final from June 30th through September 4th final. Okay.
June 30th.
June 30th, this
June 30th,
okay.
what did I say?
You said June 8th, but you meant June 30th.
June 30th. September 4th final. 5324 is the first one. SA 004 is the next one. 6034.
I'm not sure what you're looking at.
Jackie is always like that.
I think the presiding service
overtime.
Oh, she's under personnel costs, just under the subtotal.
And now I'm under operating expenses.
Always
There's several, and then moving down to office supplies. And I just wondered what the plan is. I mean, I can read all of these if you want me to, but I don't know. Is there a plan to balance? What's the plan to balance?
Well, now some of these.
This is for fiscal year 18.
This is for fiscal year 18, and so these are end-of-year figures where in each case we were under. We were under in personnel, we were under in operating. So on balance, we have some items that are over and some items that were under, but on balance they came out under. Some of these I'm in more of a position to speak to, and some of them I'm in less of a position to speak to. I have not had a full opportunity to study up on all of this yet. I know overtime, for example, I know every year Margie is sitting here saying, yeah, we ended up over on overtime. We keep asking for more money for overtime, and we keep doing X, Y, and Z in order to make an effort to curtail overtime. But that is a perennial challenge. Made more difficult by the fact that the labor market has been pretty tight lately, and so actually we've been spending more on overtime, and we've been struggling a little bit more to fill some of the positions that are then requiring people, or temporary positions that are then requiring people to work more overtime to cover for that. Moving services.
Big difference in mail. And it bothered me that we approved $100,000 for the sample ballot and have spent $85,000, which says we don't have much money for the sample ballot.
This is the last one.
The sample ballot.
Wasn't this the?
That's the last. Okay.
This is the last.
Yeah. This is for
the new budget will be next Okay,
Right.
that's true.
So this includes the sample ballot that's going to be used in the general election?
That was the
That's
sample
right.
ballot for the
Yeah.
primary?
Primary.
That was last
Not for the
fiscal year.
general.
Different fiscal year.
Right, the general's in different
The new
fiscal.
ones, it's going to cost us more for the sample ballot for the general election.
All right,
Because we're already in fiscal 19 now.
That's right.
Right. So, yeah.
but still, there needs to be balance. A lot of this needs to be.
When you were going through the list of things where we were falling short, which I think was maybe related to fiscal 19, I got a little confused. This says final. Are there still some charges outstanding here?
I do not believe so. No. I can confirm, but I do not
Okay.
believe there are.
Then this gets to
No.
my point that I raise every year and get very upset about, and that's the fact that we have about $125,000 surplus. That's not good budgeting. Not when we are constantly scraping what we think is the bottom of the barrel for things such as outreach that we try to do, et cetera, especially in the last election where we didn't have the extra money that we have this time.
I agree with you, but my question is, are all the state board bills in and paid?
I
We
believe
paid
they
the
are.
last one.
Yes.
So this 100,000
Mr. President?
is extra.
Margaret?
Mr. President?
Yes.
Yes, this is where I wish Margie was able to attend this meeting, because Margie attempted to work with the Office of Management and Budget and Finance to have those funds that we had to pay the Canvas teams paid for in FY18. And at one point, she did have agreement, but then for reasons that only Margie probably could best explain, they changed their decisions. And so a lot of the canvas from the absentee 1, absentee 2, provisional, and a portion of the preparatory work for the recounts, which we thought was going to be paid by FY18, ended up getting shifted to FY19. So it was never, our intent was to have those personnel funds related to the canvas and preparation for recount paid for out of the FY18 funds.
How much is that? I'm sorry, I guess I should say it louder.
Yeah.
How much money does that represent that would have been in FY18 instead of, I'm sorry, FY19 instead of, no, FY18 instead of FY19?
She pulled stuff together.
I don't know.
We can check on that. I mean,
I
right
could-
now in
yeah.
fiscal 19, you can see that there is a corresponding item for 38,000 and change.
Where
But
I'm sorry, where are you looking?
There's some other pieces to this as well.
Um,
There are election judge stipend costs to the tune of 38,470 already incurred in fiscal 19. We would not normally have any election judge stipend costs incurred at the beginning of a fiscal year. That's just going in the hole in order to cover costs from fiscal 18 for election judge stipend.
I mean,
That's an example. There are some
I
other
gather
items
the
as well.
argument is that the work that they were paid for occurred in fiscal year 19, although that wouldn't be necessarily true for absentee 1, because wasn't absentee 1 at the end of June? I mean, that would have been fiscal year 18 almost, no matter what definition. Those first couple of days.
First few days,
Yeah. And I think it sounds like we had a good argument for it to come out of fiscal year 18, and I don't, especially if we have a surplus.
Yeah.
The recounts the killer.
Right.
The canvases, I mean, there's obviously absentee too and the provisional, but the prep work on the recounts, which we thought perhaps it was going to be a county-wide recount.
Right.
That's a tremendous undertaking and a lot of staff time.
Is this a way to make it the problem of the next executive and council, since it's in fiscal year 19 and not fiscal year 18?
Mr. President?
Yes, Margaret.
This is a problem that occurs every 4 years as long as we have a late June primary. The ability for any budget analyst to manage these expenses related to conducting an election. During the month of May and June, Margie and Lisa were, working very, very diligently to address the funding, to address this year's, the FY18 budget so that it could be paid out of FY18 funds. And yes, the new administration could possibly help us address it, or the legislature could possibly move the election back a couple of weeks, and that would help address it.
So, as you're discussing with legislators all the various reasons why we should not have a late June primary, you can add this one to your list. Are there other budget questions, or should we move on to voter registration?
Thank you.
Jessica? Yeah. You want to go ahead and speak to voter registration?
There was also a request that in giving registration numbers that I also just provide an update on the number of those registrants as they break down by party.
We're asking Jessica to come up so she can be heard on the recording.
So what I'm going to, in order to do the party breakdown, that information then correlates to the last monthly report. So the numbers are slightly different than what was on your.
Is this?
Yes. So that's as of.
Is that in our packet?
Yeah.
So that's as of now. But the breakdown goes back to the reports for the month ending. So they're fairly similar, but that's why they're a little different. So the addition of registered voters. Well, our total number of registered voters for the month of August into September, active 652,741, and inactive 80,990. As a result of some many very different processes have been taking place, our number of inactives have dropped because voters who participated in the last election were reactivated. So that number has shifted down. We're about 79,000 inactive voters as of today. But like I said, this goes back about a week and a half ago in order to capture the additions by party. So the additions to the registration by party, we added 1,730 Democrats, 306 Republicans, 7 Green, 24 Libertarians, and 882 unaffiliated, and then 15 who designated other as a party.
That's for what time frame?
So that would be for registrations processed basically from when registration reopened through the end of August.
Okay.
25th?
Oh, you know?
June 25th?
We didn't resume.
No, we didn't resume until July something, right?
All the certifications
Right.
and everything got cleared out.
So it's like it was after July 4th, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was after
It was like that following Monday.
And really because of recounts and such,
Right,
we really
right.
didn't get back into it.
It was like
until-
July 9 or something.
So it was really
Yeah.
closer to around the beginning of August.
Okay.
When does registration close?
It closes October 16th.
And the total you gave was 652, how much?
741.
741.
Active.
Active.
But you're saying and the new voters, okay.
And then 80,990 for inactive. So like I said, the number of inactive have dropped slightly and the number of active have increased because of voters who became active, who were previously inactive.
And did we have a sheet like this with those numbers on it in our? I didn't get one. Okay.
A sheet including
The numbers she just provided? No.
Yeah.
No,
Like
Yeah.
the dashboard.
Not with the numbers she just provided.
The dashboard I don't think went out in advance.
no.
Is that
Oh,
was the question?
it's under gubernatorial. Okay, got it.
Allison, were we going to talk about the absentee now? The absentee registration? The application for that? Because Margaret and I on the phone for a week, I was getting so many calls, about July 1st, the new regulations on if you apply for a absentee ballot, the web delivery, you got to provide your driver's license or state ID number, last four of your social. And I was getting calls because it was, Margaret got to the heart of it. The state wasn't up to that task. Is that right, Margaret? Their form was...
So I sent out a report.
I believe that Jessica White should have submitted, I got a
Yeah, she
copy of
did.
it on Friday.
Yeah. She did.
So I'm going to let Jessica explain it.
Okay.
Her report covers it thoroughly.
So the heart of the issue was that on July 1st, a new law did go into effect that was passed in the 2018 legislative session. As Jim spoke to, voters who requested internet delivery now have to meet the same requirement if they use a paper application as they previously had to meet if they use the online voter registration system.
Right.
So that requires the voter to provide their Maryland driver's license or ID, their issue date of that identification or driver's license, and the last four of their social, unless they're a overseas military voter or if they have a disability.
Overseas or what?
Or a disability.
Disability.
So the state did submit and put out a new form for us to distribute to voters. They put it up on their website. But there was some confusion, unfortunately, with that form. Namely, the block where the information appeared was at the top of the form. And so some voters believed incorrectly that everybody, even if they were requesting mail delivery, had to provide that information, and some people didn't have it. So, and there was also the issue date wasn't at the top of the form. So the state revised that form and created the block at the bottom where the actual web delivery section is. So that's where it now is at. So at the bottom where if you want a web delivery, you have to then provide that additional information. With all of the other going-ons of the ballot and such, getting that posted to the website and distributed out to voters, was kind of intermixed with all of that. And so we were still getting voters who were submitting the previous form.
Yeah.
And so we've been personally calling the voters. If we have a phone number, if we don't, we have an email address for all of them since they requested web delivery. So we have a staff member, as soon as we receive the application, whether the person mails it in or they bring it in person, they open them up and review them immediately, get in touch with the voter, ask the voter if they would like to still receive web delivery, what they need to do in order to get the information, whether they want to go online and use the online portal, submit supplemental information, if they're, missing the issue date, provide that information, or they can have their delivery method changed to mail. And if they want to mail a ballot sent to them by mail, then we can just change it over and get it sent out to them.
Did I understand your report correctly that the information that's being requested has always been requested if you request your ballot online? And that this is information that's now being requested if you request your ballot by paper in order to vote it with online delivery?
I'm not sure at what point this went into effect for the online system.
Right.
If it's always been a requirement or if it's
but in the last election...
Since 2016 at least, yes,
right.
It's been a requirement.
So the information that's being requested is not new information. We're just requesting it through a new medium, essentially.
And it does, the only caveat I guess to that is if you don't possess that piece of information, then you wouldn't be eligible to receive your ballot in that manner.
Right, but that would have been true before if you were trying to do it online.
Online, and we would supplement with a paper application, correct?
Okay.
But the other piece of that just is prior to this, there was no request for an issue date.
Right.
And that is a new requirement.
No, there was a request for an issue date in the last election.
On the online, but it was absent from the applications. So those who were trying to comply with the new application, that issue date didn't get.
What doesn't happen online is that we don't get incomplete information. You have to fill these fields in order to submit it.
Right.
With the paper form now, Jessica's team is receiving paper applications that are missing the information.
And so you can get it with no issue date.
The first iteration of the form that was put out
didn't have a place for
didn't have a place for it.
And you're contacting, that's great.
So you go back to them and then you ask them for their issue date, is that?
Right.
And okay.
And we just get that information from them, or we ask them if they would like to do it by mail. And to date, that's what we've received. We haven't received anybody who submitted the application, just didn't put any of the information down. Like I said, we got some phone calls initially saying if I want to get it for my, elderly mother by mail, we're like, no, this doesn't apply. So they have corrected it, though, and it's now up as of Friday on the state's website, the new version of the form.
So the absentee ballot form in the specimen voter guide doesn't need to have the, need to ask for the last 4 digits of the Social Security number?
So when we were anticipating this when we issued the sample ballot for the primary, because this had already passed in the session. And so in order to alleviate confusion, and we weren't certain yet if voters were going to have to submit a new application if they requested a web delivery ballot in the primary for the general, which the Attorney General's office thankfully has clarified that does not need to take place. So we actually developed the application for the sample ballot, submitted it through the state, with our sample ballot and everything for their blessing, to have the voters actually go online for that web delivery. That way, in case there was a change to the form, there wouldn't be any more confusion on the voters' part as to giving the incorrect form. And so that's the form we have in place for the general as well, again, to alleviate confusion, should there be any other modification to the form take place.
Anything else with registration?
Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you.
Under the State Board of Elections item, the 2 pieces that I don't believe we've covered so far that were in Margaret's report are certainly her note that we had completed the proofing of the ballot. Well, the ballot has been certified, is on the State Board of Elections website, and they are required by federal law to begin getting mailed to military and overseas voters this Saturday. So that is accomplished. The 3-card ballot is where we are, as we indicated. And the other item that Margaret covered extensively in her director's report was security, I think mostly just to make sure that you all know that we continue to be on those issues. Margaret has been making a point of attending and sending staff to events, working with the Department of Technology Services, making sure that we take advantage of services that are available to us. And the state just held 2 tabletop exercises that staff participated in, and Margaret wanted to make sure that we kept you all informed of that. And the security issues, of course, are front and center for us all. Is there anything that anybody wants to cover under the State Board of Elections item before we move on to the Board Attorney report?
No, thank you.
In terms of my report, as you know, the staff processed Nancy Florine's petition to run as an unaffiliated candidate for county executive. Margaret issued a determination that enough signatures had been submitted for the Florine petition. That determination letter was up on the website. Under Maryland law, anyone who felt that they were aggrieved as a registered voter had 10 days to file a petition for judicial review of the determination by the Board of Elections. There was no request for judicial review, so the time for doing that has now come and gone. So that's item number 1. Item number 2 is the Judicial Watch case. The Board of Elections is not actively participating in the case, but I am sort of monitoring it from afar. Judge Hollander has issued a scheduling order, and discovery is scheduled to end in December. And I anticipate that after limited discovery, both the State Board of Elections and Judicial Watch will file cross petitions for summary judgment.
Do you expect that they're going to try to take discovery from any of us?
They have not expressed any interest in doing so, nor do I think they will. I think likely it's really purely really a legal issue. I think the discovery that would be taken from the state board would be very limited in nature, if they take any, and so I don't think that's the case. So once the cross motions for summary judgment are filed, probably it'll take 6 months, 8 months to get a ruling on that. So that's where we are. I'll continue to monitor it, but hopefully we're not going to have any involvement in the case.
But procedurally, she dismissed against us.
Dismissed the Montgomery County Board of Elections, so
But it can't be-
procedurally we're not participating at all.
But it's not final until the whole case is resolved?
Correct.
What's the...
So in order to take an appeal, generally, one has to have a final judgment as to all claims, as to all parties.
All parties.
So because there's not a final judgment on the merits as it relates to the State Board of Elections, they cannot take an appeal.
And that would run for us when the other party's dismissed.
Correct. So the time for noting an appeal regarding Judge Hollander's dismissal would be
Of us.
within 30 days of a final judgment being entered as to all parties.
Okay.
Any questions?
No, that's good.
That's,
Thank you.
Roberto, you ready to come up and cover communications?
We have old business
old
next.
business, new
I'm
business.
sorry, I have that under, sorry.
We have old business
Old
next. If
business,
there's anyone who wants to bring
Yeah.
up any old
Old
business items?
Any old business?
Any old business items?
Not that I'm aware of.
New business?
In terms of old business, I can say, Margaret, to you and the staff, in terms of old business, talking about the primary and the recounts and the canvass and the Florine petitions, in my opinion, it really went very well. Kudos again to the staff and to Kevin. At the recounts, both parties' camps were talking to me and other board members, complimenting us on how well it was run, how fair they thought it was, how open we were, questioning, and Kevin did a great job dialoguing and informing all the sides of these recounts. So when you hear compliments from both sides, that's a compliment to the work that we did. I know David was speaking to a lot of us were speaking to both sides, and both sides were very complimentary of the staff and Kevin and by inference us, I guess, the board. So again, Margaret, great job for you and the staff. I think very technical, it went smooth, and everybody was so complimentary. We're talking about a big vote. We're bigger than a lot of states, so congratulations again.
Roberto?
Well, we know. No, David.
said he had moved.
David.
No, you had media review under new business.
Media reviews under new business.
Yeah,
so I
that's
think
not-
it's really
that's not-
old business.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Well, I
new
think you
business
can-
A.
Yes.
So welcome, Roberto.
How are you? Good afternoon.
Good.
So I want to iterate the outstanding work that the Communications Committee and the board and Margie and the other team members in the agency to help in the transition in Margie's retirement. I do want to applaud the robust media resources, both digital, print, etc. It is a broader brush in the community. It is a very diverse community, as you know. 5 of the most diverse cities in the U.S. are in Montgomery County, so I do applaud the work that you guys do. I know that there was a movement has been approved. There was a lot of discussion between the board members, so this is kind of the official confirmation moving forward. The contracts have been signed. Everything is in line to be released. Right now I'm working with the different print outlets to ensure that the PSAs are in the print media. Marge is doing the other work as it pertains to the digital and the press advisories, so they're going to go out through working through this current election of going towards, obviously, the voter registration deadline, early voting implementation, and election day. So I want to move for an official confirmation of the work and also the line items as it pertains to the media outlets to be used. Obviously, the subcommittee's recommendation and the final amount in both the contract signed and payments made.
We have this in the, yeah, here it is.
Yes.
And it was Alan, David, Margie, and you were?
Oh, is that?
Yeah, it was excellent. Excellent job. Excellent. I was just disappointed that my Washington Post, I can't start my day without the Washington Post, was scratched. But
Well, where we were advertising was not every day.
I know.
It would only be on Thursday. So you can still start your Washington Post.
Jim, we can get you off that. There's a treatment program.
So we're moving forward with these, and
We need a motion?
No motion is needed, just official board consensus that he can move forward.
Yeah, I think you have it unanimously.
Okay. Thank you so much.
And
And
I'd
again,
just like
just
to say, Mr. President, I think we had a very constructive committee meeting, and I commend David's work
Good.
in helping us put these numbers together. We worked very cooperatively, and
Good.
we sought to really cast a wide net. I think it's a very fair allocation of the money.
Good.
Thank you, Alex. I feel the same way. I mean, we worked very well on this
Yeah.
one.
I think this is very exciting to see, the new contacts that we're going to have here, and it's great, of course, that we got the extra money to make this possible, because I know it's something we've talked about for several years going back and wanting to do the outreach, it's great, and these look like really good areas to be reaching into, so. Yeah, thank you all very much.
Mr. President, let me also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention all the work that Margie did to kind of help us prepare for the meeting, and a lot of the research and suggestions and proposals that she had, and help to kind of tell us what the various options were. So Margie's work should definitely be commended on that.
When do we hit the ground on these? When do they start?
They'll start, I believe, the first week of October. After this, I apologize for not having
Well, but
that on,
October?
but it is in the e-chain, yes. In the email.
Great. Excellent.
Thank you.
I just want to commend, because the work on some of this transition has really been going on for some time, and Margie and Hilberto have met several times on pulling together their various parts of communications, and it's really been seamless having Hilberto pick up the media work and adopt this more sort of unified approach to communications, and it's going great, and I just want to commend him publicly for taking on that expanded role.
And in that connection, I guess you'll be wondering, do you need to hire anybody else, or can you do it all?
No,
Hilberto can do it all, right?
Everything. No. I need to see. No, we are going to expand our outreach team looking forward after the gubernatorial elections. There's a lot of need in the community, not just language, but also special needs. We're working closely with the school system to institutionalize future vote, and we'll discuss that during my outreach report and the work that we've been doing with David Naiman and the network and that conduit that he has served as a catalyst to get that institutionalization of the program in the school system more solidified. So a lot of good things are working, and also I'll expand it during my outreach report.
Well, also, can you give us, can you email us samples of the scripts you have?
That's fine.
At some point.
Yeah, a lot of those things have gone through kind of internal with Margaret and Margie. A lot of it has been kind of vetted through the previous elections. There's simple, concise messaging. So we'll share that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So Dave, there was no other new business, correct? Except David.
Not on the agenda.
All right, Dave.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion. It's actually a series of suggestions, and they don't need to be voted on today, but I would want to get them on the agenda for October. They are all in the category of, I guess I would call it transparency, but it would be a combination of transparency and making sure that all board members are involved in things. The first would be that all letters that are addressed to the board president or to elections at montgomerycountymd.gov would automatically be sent to all board members. And we've discussed that in the past, but it hasn't happened up until now.
Who gets those letters? Do they come here mainly?
Lisa gets them.
Lisa, and opens them and transmits them to you? Okay, just...
Well, yeah, most...
I receive the correspondence, go through the mail, and either talk to Margaret to find out who needs to address the situation, whether it's to Kevin or to Jim or to Margaret.
And what I'm proposing is that all of us would at least get a copy of those letters. That doesn't mean necessarily that we're all involved in the response, but it means we all know that they all exist. The second is that all board member questions to staff, the response would go to all board members. So in other words, if
the question and the response.
Right. So if I were, I don't know if the question has to go without the response, but certainly the response would. So if I were to ask a question of Allison and she were to respond, she would respond to everyone. Same for every member of the board. The third would be that all information about polling places, early voting centers, and absentee votes would go to all board members, and to make sure that we're all informed as to what's going on.
Could you just repeat that last one?
Yes. That information about polling places, early voting centers, and absentee votes. I'm thinking of the things that actually affect the casting of votes. That's what I'm talking about there. Those are the three different ways of casting votes. That all of those items would again go to all board members. I found it to be helpful to get Margaret's report early this time, although I realize it was a one-time thing because of her schedule. But my own view, and this is part of my motion as well, is that all board meeting materials and presentations that are made to the board should come to us 3 business days before the meeting by Wednesday close of business. And I would say that there's no reason, I know that other public bodies do this, that the materials that come to us can't be made public on our website for those who want to come to our meetings. That could be done by the following day. The idea being that the public would get a chance, and we would get a chance to hear from the public about the things that we're talking about. The fifth one is, and I don't know whether this is a problem for everyone, but a number of people have commented to me about the difficulty of coming to talk to us on a Monday afternoon. And I realize that there's reasons historically why we have our meetings on Monday afternoon, but one thing that we could do that would be at least helpful to some people to some extent would be to have our public comment period closer to the end of our meeting instead of the beginning, so that those who work on Mondays or Monday afternoons, they can get here on their way home as opposed to smack in the middle of the day. And then the last one, which I know has been a Mary Ann favorite in the past that I have supported, but that we have not yet gotten to work as well as it should. I personally believe we should have at least one public evening meeting a year. And it has to have adequate publicity, which I'm not sure that our past efforts have done. Certainly based on the result of how many people showed up, I would say they haven't. But and somewhere in the center of the county, or better yet, if we did it in multiple meetings, we could have them in different parts of the county so that we aren't favoring one part over another. But I think that I would not assume that the public is not interested in what we're doing because they don't show up at 2 o'clock on a Monday afternoon. In fact, I think quite the contrary. I think there is a fair amount of interest. And I think that with adequate publicity, that we could get a lot of good suggestions from people out there, and we could also make the public feel like our process is that much more transparent. I think this year in particular, with the very unusual elections that we've had and are having, there's an even greater need for transparency, because I think that there's going to be a lot of questions about how certain things are handled, and we have unprecedented situations and all of that. So I think the greater communication we have, the better off we are. So anyway, I would make that as a motion. Obviously, I've given you a lot to think about. I haven't given you anything in writing yet, which I can give you very shortly.
I would like a list.
Yes, I will be happy to do that. Unfortunately, this has come at a time where my day job has been particularly busy, so that's why you haven't gotten anything from me yet. I know. Yeah, I know. Isn't that amazing? Fortunately, it pays the bills. But my hope would be that we could adopt these or some version, whatever it is that the group is willing to adopt at our meeting in October.
Yeah, I might suggest, David, it might make sense. A lot of these, I think, I would definitely agree with. A couple of them I might want to think more about. Maybe if you separated them and split them up.
Right. Well, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, obviously, I'm not trying to have one big up or down vote. I'm trying to make whatever changes that we feel we can make. Mm-hmm. So if it, and for that matter, I don't pretend to have all the answers all by myself. Maybe there's a way to accomplish the goal that I'm talking about. Maybe you have a better way of doing that, and that's fine. I mean, my hope is just for all of us to feel like we're all well informed and able to participate to the full extent, and for the public to feel like we are responding to them and that they are able to follow what we're doing.
I think these are all reasonable suggestions. I like them. I mean,
Well, let's
David,
add
first
it.
next time, or?
Yeah, could you add that, Lisa, to
Yes.
the October
Mhm.
15th
Sure.
agenda?
David, Robert's rules is running through my mind. Could you withdraw that as a motion and make it as suggestions to be made in individual motions later?
Sure.
Yeah, well,
If that'll make everyone more comfortable, my only request is that we do it in October.
yeah.
That we not wait. If that makes people more comfortable to have it done by motion later, I'm fine with that.
It may make sense to do them one by one.
Right.
Anyway.
Right.
Yeah,
That's fine.
yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, October.
That's
That
fine.
would
Yes.
be good.
Yes.
Thank you very
Yes.
much. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say I think these are great suggestions, and they're I think for the most part ideas that we've talked about with an issue having arisen usually, that brought up some concern. But I like very much putting them under the heading of transparency, because that's certainly what this is. And I agree. I think this is an era when there's a lot more attention being spent to the running of elections. And a lot of that's around security, of course, that's come to the fore, but these other issues as well. And I think it's very timely to look at it. And yeah, I agree. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other new business? Okay. All right, Allison, so we're on the general election?
Yeah. Is Eric in the room yet?
Yeah.
Oh, there you are.
Eric, come join us. Eric, thank you for your work on this. Very thorough. Thank you very much. So we're talking about the sample ballot?
Yeah, so you guys all received a draft of this, kind of final draft.
Do you have another one?
They were sent electronically, and then I just made
Yeah.
copies for review purposes.
Got a few extras in here.
I got one. You got one? Everybody's got one?
So, the nice thing about this election was that a lot of the material had sort of been poured over by you guys in the primary election, so it wasn't significant changes to it overall. The one challenge was that with a 5-page ballot this go around, we had to expand it slightly, and we had to make cuts to a few things that people had liked, like the framework of the whole thing about making a voting plan and some other elements like that. We were able to preserve some things. The election security, we tried to keep that on the very back cover. It seems like it's continued to be a timely addition and something that's in the news and on people's minds. And I think giving them some information about all the things that we do to ensure election security, that the state does to ensure election security, are important to get across to people. But we had to shorten up a few sections, as I mentioned, because we have such a large ballot this time, that took up a lot of room in the voter guide.
Yeah, I didn't realize that the amendments and the charter amendments, were so wordy and lengthy. I didn't realize.
Yeah, I know.
They're wordy in multiple languages.
Yeah, I didn't realize that there's so much to read on these ballots.
Yeah, and we had worked with the state when we were going through the ballot proofing process. We tried to, push the state to see if they could get it down to a two-card, 4-face ballot, but it just wasn't possible. I think they tried a number of ways. Natasha Taylor at the state, and it just wasn't something that could be remedied this time. So there's going to be some unique challenges it makes the sample ballot a little longer, and it's going to create some unique challenges to the election operations as a whole.
Dave?
A few questions and suggestions, and I realize that space is an issue, and perhaps you get as many opinions about what warrants space and what doesn't as you have people sitting here. Oh, and the first thing is that the vote by mail, it says Tuesday, November 2nd, but you mean Friday, November 2nd.
Where are we? Steve?
The very first page where it says vote by mail request deadline, the web delivery deadline is Friday, November 2nd. I had suggested, in part because it pains me every time we have to reject absentee ballots that are not postmarked in a timely way, that we put a little more information into our explanation here for those who are not experienced in using the U.S. mail, or at least not familiar with what it takes to get something postmarked in a timely way. I had suggested that we say that your ballot must be postmarked by November 6th. You say you must postmark your ballot by November 6th. Technically, I guess we're not, the voter is not the one who postmarks it, the post office is. I had also suggested that we have a hint for people that if they want to make sure that their ballot is postmarked on time, that they mail it before the Saturday before the election, because we get a huge number of ballots that are postmarked on the day after the election. I don't remember what the numbers are, but we had stacks of ballots in that category. And my own view is that with a little bit of extra coaching, we could substantially limit those numbers and get people to submit on time. So I don't know. It doesn't have to be my phraseology, but as it stands now, we're telling people you must postmark your ballot by Tuesday, November 6th, particularly for voters under 30. They may not know what that means, I think, but I can tell you that for voters over 30, there's a lot of them who don't know what that means. I know of voters who are not that much younger than me who think that if they put the ballot out for their postman on the day before the election day, that it will be postmarked by election day, and that generally doesn't happen. So, is there a way that we can find space here to do more? It seems like there's some extra space at the bottom, but if not, there are probably other things here that we can that we could adjust, at least in my opinion. I mean, but is there a way for us to do that?
I think if you're asking, is there room? Absolutely. Especially on that particular page, there's some additional room.
It looks like.
I think that one of the things that, there's always some back and forth on some of these ideas, and one of the things that has guided, I think, this guide over the last couple of years is trying to have it stick more to facts, just because sometimes those suggestions, if it doesn't pan out for someone, then we've suggested something, but that's
and if we don't suggest it, their vote will be thrown out.
Right.
So
well, I think part of the problem is we have to be careful about, and I understand your point, David, but I think if we start advising people to make sure that it gets deposited in the mail on a certain date before the election,
okay,
that it almost seems like we're guaranteeing that it's going to be postmarked and arrived, and rather than perhaps saying,
okay, how about
deposit it in a U.S. mailbox,
several days in advance,
or by no later than November 6th, because if you deposit it
in a mailbox on November 6th, it won't be postmarked on November 6th.
If it's before the collection time, it will be.
Or we can have like a suggestion. It is suggested that, something like that.
We can go back and, we're not alone in this being a problem, and
right.
So I know other jurisdictions have wrangled with language on this, and I'm
That's
sure we can go back and try to come up with some way of getting that point across.
I would just like to say, though, that if other jurisdictions have decided against making the suggestion, I would still advocate that we, as the jurisdiction with the most absentee ballots in the state, should still make a. I'm not, like I said, I'm not wed to my particular suggestion that I wrote out as I was going through this, but something that says that because basically the day before is not necessarily sufficient, and of course, your point is well taken. We have plenty of examples where the post office does things that are beyond understanding, and it could be a week before, and we still don't get it. So we don't want to be guaranteeing what the post office will do.
And it doesn't help the person who's still holding their ballot on election day. And,
right.
And I know there's some jurisdictions who played with language about taking your ballot into the post office and getting it round stamped.
Right,
and
right.
All wordy.
That's the hint that I give to my family members, is to just watch them stamp it.
But it's a good suggestion.
But
to mail it before.
But anyway, yes, if we can.
But check your post office's deadline, or some words like that.
Yeah.
People have to have some personal responsibility. We can't take care of every case.
And some people won't follow directions no matter how many times.
Right, but there's personal
which is not a reason for us not to try.
I
mean,
I would also like to comment too that if you guys, are really adamant about it, just forward that suggestion to the state board, because they put these ballot instructions, and especially coming from some of our board members, they may be more willing to make some modifications. So what the voter actually gets with their ballot and what it tells them to do. There's some language, but it could be worded in a way that might be more helpful for the voter who actually now has the ballot in hand.
The actual wording that goes out with the absentee.
Yeah.
That is another area that should be attacked with this.
I agree as many places as we can get it
out. I agree.
Yeah.
Back of the envelope. Places that we can really impart. Make sure you do this. And maybe
that's a good suggestion.
Appreciate help with that.
Okay. On page 5.
I have some suggested language for that page. How about this? When you mail it, to add it, add someplace like.
Only one district.
Maybe just add to the very end of this, or before the line. We just say, when you mail it, be sure to allow enough time to have your ballot envelope postmarked on or before November 6th.
Return envelope must be postmarked before Tuesday, November 6th, it says now. So you want to add wording to that particular line? That's similar to what you just said.
Yeah, this may replace that, I guess.
When it goes out.
Be sure to have your ballot envelope postmarked on or before Tuesday, November 6th. If it's not postmarked by November 6th or earlier, it will not be counted.
See, I think though that doesn't tell people how to comply. It tells people what the ramifications are if they don't.
You're saying you want something that says we encourage you.
We encourage you
to put your absentee ballot in the postal stream
or
mail it early.
Yes.
Before.
Yes. Yes.
In order for your ballot to count.
Right. In order for your ballot to be postmarked on time and count, we encourage you to put it in the mail several days before the deadline.
Yeah.
Or something along those lines.
I could also check the U.S. Postal Service, their information, and see if they have any suggestions or language that they use for, how the postmarking process works, so that we can even add that in to say the U.S. Post Office suggests that.
Well, and I think putting the words "in order for your ballot to count" is an absolute sort of changes their thinking equation.
Right. I like that.
Yeah.
And we may be more credible than the U.S. Postal Service.
Now, I just came back from a country that has done away with their government-run postal service.
Is that right?
And it's private, and it's a nightmare. So I'm all for supporting our U.S. Postal Service.
Well, whatever the case, I think that suggesting. I'm not saying we shouldn't say to people that their vote won't count, because obviously their vote won't count. So I think it's a good idea to get their attention. I just think we have to tell them, like Kevin suggested, that they need to get it into the postal stream a few days earlier if they want to make sure that it's going to be postmarked. So
what I'm hearing is that there's this one topic in the sample ballot that you'd like us to go back. For Eric to go back and work with us to try to come up with a way to make that more, to achieve what the board has been talking about and trying to come up with some language.
Can you give us that paragraph in Word format, maybe?
Well, we've got to move quickly because we need to roll in the presses this weekend, and Eric's got 40-some versions to be generated and
Right.
Spanish to be accurate in, and
Right.
so we've got to, I think we should just have Eric take the lead on this, and he can reach out to board members, on this to try to come up with language that is going to achieve the will of the group as quickly as possible.
Okay. A question about page 5. Is the board open until 9 o'clock only on the deadline for voter registration?
What, David?
I'm at the second paragraph
Okay.
Yeah.
at the top of page 5 where it
Gotcha.
says by 9 p.m.
Gotcha.
It says you can update this information until Tuesday, October 16th online by mail-in or faxing or in person at the board, and it says by 9 p.m. Is that, I gather that 9 p.m. we stay open late on the deadline day, but otherwise we're not open until 9, so can we say by 9 p.m. on October 16th?
You don't think it's evident from the heading, though?
No, I don't. Because I think that by 9 p.m., I think that if I looked at that, I can't tell whether our office is open until 9 p.m. on October 15th.
Well, but above it, we
says
have by
heading.
11:59 p.m.
Right.
for the online, and that's, it's all referring to the October 16th date.
I don't disagree with David, though. I think one of the few additional words on that
That can't hurt.
makes it clearer.
Yeah.
So 2 areas to
Yeah,
tighten up and
yeah.
come up with some language.
Well, that's just
an easy one.
on October 16th.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else in the sample ballot? And this is another one, I'll just say, I'm extremely grateful that Eric has picked up and run with the sample ballot, because
Yes.
I've been here at 3 a.m. trying to do these edits myself before, so it's fantastic that he's taken it and run with it. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Gilberto, your report got split in 2, so outreach, the outreach part.
We have a copy of the latest outreach calendar. There's a lot of movement in the county, as you can tell. It was challenging with the fact that we, technically just finished recounts and certification, and now getting the momentum and competing with summer and then August vacations, etc. What's not on there is the public library drive. I'm just waiting the final to get the green light from the library system. Staying robust, we try to do broad brush outreach, looking at the different.
People still go to libraries?
Excuse me?
Do people still go to libraries?
Yes.
That-
So what we do is, before I was their outreach manager at the library system. So luckily we have a lot of relationships there. And what we do is we go during their peak time. So there's a peak time. They're one of the busiest agencies next to the Motor Vehicles Administration. But there's a peak time where they get the majority of the foot traffic was usually in the evenings. But also when we go to the libraries, we focus on the gamut of voter outreach and empowerment. In addition to the conversation you had about making sure that the absentee ballot is postmarked, we tell individuals to take it to your post office as opposed to putting it in your neighborhood mailbox. Because like my mail, it's either earlier in the afternoon, and if you put it in your neighborhood mailbox on the 6th, by the time the post office comes, it may be postmarked the 7th. So part of our outreach is that go to the post office and walk it in and get a stamp on it, as opposed to depositing your ballot in your neighborhood corner blue bin. Other than that, I do want to also thank David, Mr. David Naiman. He's helped us kind of solidify relationship with SGA. We're working right now. We started today, so we had a lot of interest for our 16-year-old through the Future Vote program.
SGA is
A Student Government Association, to serve as election judge and also to be pre-registered, but also the students that are 18 to ensure that they are registered to vote. So the kickoff started today. We're going to hit all of the high schools, a couple of the parochial schools as well. So we're looking for a good turnout. As far as today, I was at Paint Branch. We had a good turnout there today. Any questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Approval for conduct of logic and accuracy testing. As you all know, you have as you've all had to sign before a form when we do logic and accuracy testing that for some reason or another says that you certify that on such and such a date you directed the election director to actually do logic and accuracy testing. So we are going to need a motion for you to, or we need you to direct the election director to actually do logic and accuracy testing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Ooh, wait, I need clarification on that.
So the motion is to direct the election director to conduct logic and accuracy testing and preparation of all voting units to be used in the 2018 gubernatorial general election, which is the phrase in your
Jackie
form.
made the motion.
Yeah,
Alex and Naheed were who wants to?
And Alan. I just need a second on the motion. Who wants to confirm?
second.
Alex was fine. Alex did it.
Is that what we're going with? Okay.
So.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do we have to sign that? You can pass it.
You will sign that when we actually do the public test.
Yeah.
The next item on the agenda, I believe, is the early voting assignments, and I'm not sure where the board now stands on that.
Well, I was thinking, why don't we start with what we all did in the primary, and are there any changes to that?
Yes.
So Alex was at Mid-County in the primary.
Okay,
Naheed was at the EOB.
okay.
Jim was at Silver Spring. Jackie was at Damascus. David was at Lawton. Marianne was at Wheaton. And Alan was at Potomac. And the remainder were covered by staff.
And I'm deferring to Jackie for Lawton.
So if...
Wait, can we start from the beginning if
Yes.
that's okay? Just because I have a list and so we have assignments.
Why don't you read your list? Yes.
So I have Mid-County, which is early voting center 1. Does anyone?
So that was Alex.
Alex, okay. We're all okay with that?
Yep.
Then we have the EOB.
Naheed?
Everyone's okay. Germantown Community Rec Center.
Does anybody want that, or does that stay with staff?
Okay.
Actually, we need somebody there.
Are there, may I ask,
That's a
before
busy
we
one.
go through this, it is a busy one,
There
and
was a problem when
I'm just wondering if there some here where we have not actually had board members present, that should we discuss the need to maybe have someone there as opposed to some other place that kind of operates routinely like EOB.
Who covered it in the primary?
We had staff covered in the primary.
And he's busy. And
Mr. President, it's Margaret.
Yeah.
In the past, Gracie used to cover Germantown.
Yeah, that's busy. That's busy.
That was in the last election, the 2016 election cycle.
Well, Alan, that means it's yours.
Well, does anybody want to work at Germantown?
Is it real close to a metro? It really isn't, I guess.
Which one were you going to change to?
Well, in the past, I've worked at either Lawton or Wheaton. If you wanted to stay at Wheaton, I was probably going to change to Gaithersburg.
That's another big one.
Which is also covered by staff.
Right. I was specifically trying to avoid conflicts with my colleagues, because if you went based on where I actually go places, I would either be going to EOB or Lawton or Wheaton. But if you, I'm also trying to find somewhere that is not so inconvenient that it'll be hard to get to for closing, because I think that's going to be the issue. Getting there to open is
Mr.
not.
President?
Yeah, Margaret.
Mr. President?
Margaret? Go ahead.
Yeah. The Germantown location, not that, it would be helpful for the staff to be able to continue to cover that location, mostly because of its proximity to the Board of Elections offices. So that normally in the past, sometimes Janet Ross has been covering that, so that if something pops up, she's literally minutes away from the office and needs to, do some sort of problem solving. So I appreciate the desire to reach out to another location, but staff would like to continue to hold on to Germantown, but we will defer to the wishes of the board.
That certainly makes sense to me. to have staff do it.
Well, I'm not sure I understand. Is because Germantown is
Near here.
Close.
so is Gaithersburg.
Well,
I mean, I'm not sure I understand. Why does proximity to here determine where we go?
Chris.
That's also covered
Oh,
by
Chris?
staff right now.
Covers Gaithersburg as well.
Right, but
No, I used to cover Gaithersburg.
we've all covered different places at different times. But
Well, remember, this is just for opening and closing.
understood,
everyone,
which
I think
is
all
why
the board
which is
members
why I
goes
don't
off
which is
site.
why I don't understand this desire
Tell them about our
to not have board
Germantown
members in certain
experience.
places.
What?
Our
It
experience
wasn't
with
not have
Germantown.
board members,
Remember
it was
we
staff
went there?
staying
No.
It was
close
more
to
convenient
here.
for staff being where they are.
To pick
here.
up polls, I think what happens too is that we pick up like for instance in the primary, I went to Germantown and picked up all the poll books and brought them back to the board.
But that's not really part of our job.
No,
anyway.
and then
we
it's
don't do
not.
that.
But
Yeah,
That's always
Mark-
staff
staff.
had to go there and pick up.
All right, yes, Margaret, go ahead.
Mr. President, the staff will defer to the board. I just wanted that bit of expectation on the part of the staff just to be shared with the board. But we will cover whatever locations you choose not to get covered.
There are 11 sites, there are 7 of you, so we'll cover 4 of them, whichever 4 you choose.
Well, let's eliminate, I go to Silver Spring.
Mm-hmm.
Nahid is where?
Oh
you-
wait, so we have
City.
Mid-County Alex, we have EOB Nahid, Germantown will skip. Right now we have Praisner, Marilyn Praisner. Any volunteers
Denise
for that
used to
one?
cover that one. I cover that one now.
Okay, so we'll skip that. So Silver Spring Civic Center, we have Jim. Activity Center at Borough Park.
That was
Staff right
staff,
now.
right?
Okay.
as of now.
That's Gaithersburg.
Yeah.
So Damascus Community Recreation Center.
That was
I don't think-
Jackie,
we
but
don't need a
I
board
think the
member.
discussion earlier was that Jackie may move to Lawton
Right.
and staff may
Right.
cover Damascus.
Yeah, I don't know
so
if we need a
then-
staff member. I mean, a
No,
board member.
we don't
there.
need somebody at Damascus.
So then Lawton will have Jackie. And then St. Catherine Labor.
I will do St. Catherine by, discussion with the pastor, etc. I think he's really counting on that.
Okay.
Good.
Then we have Potomac Community Recreation Center.
I can do that.
What did you do last time, Al?
Potomac.
Okay.
And then we have Sandy Spring Volunteer Fire Department.
Which was staff.
We don't
last
need a
time.
board member there.
So
what's left?
So the
So
ones
you
that are
know-
left are Gaithersburg, Sandy Spring, Germantown, and Damascus. Is that right?
Damascus is not that
I don't
great.
need. I don't know if we need a board
So
member.
so
Sandy
You don't need
Spring.
so to me, it would, well, and Praisner, which is also far away.
Yeah, it is.
Do you need an answer this minute? I mean, my first reaction was to take Gaithersburg, but I think I want to think about where I can be most helpful. So I'd rather have some time to think about it, if that's okay.
So how many?
Okay.
How many are?
You have 11
So we're
staff.
good. So we'll have staff fill
They take the
the,
rest.
Right. Okay.
yeah.
So the 6 of you
So it's just
are
so six are
assigned,
and
then
David's.
going to make a decision.
Okay. Good.
Okay.
Okay, then election judge update. Leslie
Also this.
is not here right now. I can get a member of her team, but fundamentally you've got the numbers in front of you from the dashboard that Janet pulls the data from. As of this weekend, we had roughly 1,000 judges trained
Those are mine.
out
No, they're
of
not.
the roughly 2,800 needed, but we also had 1,100 and change scheduled for their training.
How does
So,
that compare to past years at this time?
I'm not sure that I can give a confident answer to that. I think it feels, considering that it is, it's a gubernatorial year, which is often a bit of a challenge, but it is the general, and we, a lot of the people who served in the primary, we can bank. We've lost some of our students who were going off to college or something in the fall.
Right.
But we've managed to pull in some of these 16-year-olds that we're getting to keep through the general election, so I know that's good. I don't have a member of the EJ team in here right now, but I know that they're working it hard. You know, we've got more of a compressed timetable for the general election, but they've got a really solid team of recruiters that they've been able to keep from the primary, and so I think
Right.
overall their numbers are fairly solid,
Well,
given that there's a lot.
But
you know,
again,
there's a lot to do.
my question is how it compares to the past, because I would think that time of year would have a lot to do with it. To me,
I can check on this
not
more.
knowing what it's been in the past, the fact that we need 2,700 of them and have scheduled 1,100 of them, that sounds like a lot.
So
But I realize that, you know, if you come back and tell me that last year at this time we were further behind than we are. My recollection is that the last election we felt like we were a little understaffed. I mean, I think collectively we felt that we were a little understaffed, and so maybe we should be talking about what we can do to pick up the pace if necessary. But I don't know, you know, how do we measure that?
just to clarify, we've already trained almost 1,000 plus. We have the 1,100 and some who have scheduled their training.
Okay.
So we're actually, I think, in a
all right. So we've trained. Looks like 955, according to this. And we've scheduled 1,144. That's 1,144 in addition to the 955. Is that what you're saying?
No, these are scheduled training.
Yeah.
So I'm not attended training.
Wait, but
So-
wait,
They
but
haven't
does the
attended yet, but they're signed.
no, but does scheduled training include those who are trained or not? Because those numbers are all larger than the judges trained. So does that mean that we scheduled 207 and we trained 165 of them?
I will clarify with the team and email you. And email you all.
Because
Okay.
if we trained 955, why have we only assigned 141 of them?
Chris, can you go get Jessica Jones?
That sounds
Thank you.
small.
Well, not only that, I mean, there's a big difference between if we've trained 955 and we have 1,144
Twice,
additional.
Yeah.
And
Then
whether
then we're in good shape.
right, but if we have 1,144 scheduled
200.
and you know then we're either really close to our target or we're
Way behind.
or we're way behind. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's double.
Yeah.
Basically, almost. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lisa and Chris have both just stepped out of the room to go try to get your question answered, so you don't have to wait on an email from me. So hopefully we'll be able to cover that. I could be wrong in what I believe this says, so we'll see what they have to say. Any other questions? We'll come back to the election judge update. Any other questions
do we have
on
a
prep for the general?
do we have a breakout in terms of the party affiliation of the judges? Are we still usually we're in need of Republican judges?
I'm
need
sure
to
we're
break
still in
that.
need of Republican judges.
Yes.
Okay.
They're doing some outreach. We have not put that on this dashboard in the past. I can take a look and
Okay.
see what that would take for us to pull the data in that way.
Long
But
down.
yes, I think you can assume that we have the same challenges we always
There's so
have.
many things I could say.
So while we're waiting for folks to come in who can speak to that more directly, any other questions on gubernatorial general preparations?
No,
One thing,
Yeah.
I know we talked about it a lot, like Sandy Spring and some other locations, the signage wasn't good. Like I
Yes.
drove by
Yes,
Sandy
that's a very
Spring.
good. That's a very good point.
Yes,
I drove by
It
Sandy
was
Spring.
terrible.
me too.
Yeah.
I couldn't find it.
Yeah,
No, we couldn't either.
No,
I drove by.
He
Is
and I were together.
Is it
couldn't
possible
find
to get a semi-permanent sign there? I mean, at least one that lasts for
I would.
for 8
Well,
days.
but Allison, some of these locations didn't have really good. I know
I mean,
Silver-
because
Sandy Spring was.
Because they're desperately in need of a sign for Sandy
Yeah.
Spring. And,
Yes.
I put one up there
I know.
kind of partway through early voting last time, but it really it was after all of you missed the turn.
But those big flags we have at
Yeah.
Damascus? We got those big little.
Chris has spent a
half-
pretty significant amount of time trying to work on signage issues, both at Sandy Spring, and then of course there were efforts to try to improve the signage, at Wheaton as well. Chris, can
Oh,
you remind me
also,
the Sandy
St.
Springs
Catherine Memorial.
signage?
Yes.
Right.
Sandy
The
Springs.
Sandy Springs signage, we cannot
there was nothing
put
on Veers
signs
Mill,
up in
No.
that
remember.
location
No.
that everybody
Alan,
wants to,
Except
right?
the big name of St. Catherine.
Right, Alan and I put one
Now,
up ourselves.
what
Too many
we're,
people
Yeah.
talking. I'm
Yeah.
like, we want to get
Sandy
Oh, I'm
this
sorry.
on record.
I'm sorry.
that's all right, excuse me. What we're in the process of doing is working with the state highway administration and finding out where we can place signs. What we envision, or what we're requesting, is a digital sign on the median on 108, as
Oh.
close as we can
Nice.
get to
In,
the
in,
intersection.
in both directions?
We are looking and coming in the other direction, which would, I guess, be coming west.
What is the other, when you say the other direction?
Well, we have a lot of median going 118 towards the east.
Uh-huh.
Coming the other way, where we're coming through Sandy Spring, we really don't have a lot of options, but we're looking. And Highway will not give us approval until 30 days out, but of
Why?
course that's their policy, so we're real close to 30 days now.
Is our request to them in writing?
Yes.
Could I
There
get a
is
copy, please?
Certainly. There's forms that we have to fill out
Okay.
in order to get this.
I'm suspecting that if the right people ask about it, it can get
behind
approved.
some other sign. Maybe we should move that one too. Is the light pole something in front of the sign? You couldn't see even that one. That one need to be moved to, remember?
You got those
Yeah,
big
yeah,
flags
sign
at
was
the...
behind.
Yeah, there was a telephone pole there that you could
yeah,
attach
that
something
the sign
to
would be here.
as well, but again, you probably need to get
Damascus
some
got
kind of
those
approval in
big
order to do it.
flags,
And we had
They
those
can- I know.
confiscated. Anything that moves,
State
the
highway,
highway
they took 'em down.
administration is not going to allow us. And she's also told us not to expect that we can probably even stake things in the median.
But you
You
cannot
know.
really do what?
Stake.
Stake
Stake. Oh, stake.
signs.
So where are
in the-
they when all the
Candidates
candidates
do it all
do
the time.
that? There were
Yeah,
there were signs staked in
Everywhere.
public places everywhere.
But they risk getting torn down by the SHA when they go
They-
through, right?
What happens
They were up for days after the
Even
election.
after
They're still up.
And you probably saw the same ones I saw at Montrose and 270 that were every time you get on the 270 they were there.
Hey, I can tell you
How'd that
those
get
The
out?
same is River Road.
those
getting
candidates
to
calling us asking why we took their signs down.
I know.
I attended a county training class where I happened to be sitting right next to somebody from permitting services who supervises the teams that need to go up and pull up that stuff after
Right,
election day.
right.
And he was telling his stories, but one of the things that he was, now of course he was not talking about the campaign specifically, he was talking about some of the companies
Right.
that put their signs out in the
Right.
median. And he was relating to the group that they had won some legal victories in actually prosecuting
Right.
employees at stores for putting
but
those
we are
things
not
up.
them.
So,
I mean,
No, we're not.
we are providing a public good. So the idea that we can't get the state to approve of signs telling people where to vote
For a couple of days.
for a couple of days or even for a week,
Yeah.
that seems very odd.
Maybe Jim correct the governor.
Sometimes
They pull them out. The state, they pull them out.
the
Our
argument
signs.
is
Yeah, but they work for people who could tell them not to for 8 days.
sometimes
Yeah,
the argument
gotcha.
with the state is public safety. Like the movement of the flags and so forth is something that has always been deemed distracting.
Oh, see.
So, Chris, you'll provide what we've got in
Yes,
writing that the
definitely.
board members
I
can.
Street
will.
signs are distracting.
Movement of the
But
flag.
they're necessary.
I don't know where. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Chris, this sort of a similar topic, and this may not be something you're working on. Has anyone reached out to Montgomery County Police and the state police to see whether we can get relief and use the HOV lanes on 270 on election day?
It is nothing that I've worked out or have
I
thought
was
to
thinking
work
more-
out, but we can certainly
Well-
But
address
it would be a
this.
great PR thing.
Use them.
Well,
use
If
them
we
for
could
What do
what?
you- what do you
get
mean,
people to have
Ken?
that advertised.
I mean that we deploy equipment from here and we need to deploy it down county. Not being able to use HOV lanes to go ahead and get to election
Takes an
polling
extra hour.
places takes a lot longer in the early morning hours when we actually need to deploy it.
Oh.
Seems
Or
to
late
do
Do you,
that.
do you need a motion? I'll move it.
No.
We can send them a letter?
Well, I mean,
I think call at this
Yeah.
stage. I mean, yeah, letters get lost.
Kevin?
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just seems to me that, I mean, we do run into that problem where
Wow, I hadn't heard
it's
that before, but yeah.
7 o'clock in the morning, and
Does
it's
everybody have,
270s out of
doing
deadline.
that, have credentials?
I don't know.
So we need an
makes
We
sense
can
to
we
find
can
it
make
out.
sure
All
that
have
they
county
we can make sure that they do.
Yeah, if they got a truckload of voting machines, it's
Yeah.
not like.
I mean, even we have credentials.
Remember we talked to the police officer and he said probably go
You
to
have a
the
blue,
state.
white light and a siren?
You have to get Chief Manger and probably some other people to sign off on it, but if they were willing to do it, it'd make it a lot easier to get to Rockville and other places.
Does Montgomery County have the jurisdiction to do that?
It's a state road.
Yeah, that's
State
true.
70 is a federal highway.
I think we're back with our.
Well, but whose hold restriction is it? I guess is the other question.
And who's writing the ticket?
Right.
State.
I still think that if the right people ask, we can get. Maybe I'm overly optimistic, but that we can get a good answer.
I'll look into
So
it.
Kevin's going to
Yeah.
follow up on this one.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on signage? I did bring Jessica Jones in here. She had no idea
Okay.
that she was going to be called into the board
Okay.
meeting, and
Okay.
You're going to be
I will
grilled.
not.
Yeah, you would
Jessica, I will not make you speak to. I know Janet just ran numbers this morning for the
I
board.
briefed her a little bit, yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if
Here's
you're in
the
a position
question.
to speak to these numbers or not,
You
but
have- she doesn't have that sheet.
I have a very
This one
similar.
doesn't here.
I have a very similar sheet.
When this says scheduled training and it says judges trained, is that like 207
David.
scheduled and
Wait.
165 of
What?
them?
No, these are separate numbers. Scheduled training, that's 207 people have scheduled, are in for training scheduled. Once they complete their training scheduled, they move into another category. We don't duplicate the category.
So we can add those two numbers
Yes.
together, and so we have more than 2,000 people who have either been trained or scheduled for training.
Number.
955 trained, 1,144 scheduled for training.
Yes.
We add those.
so there was just a sidebar conversation that I'm not sure was picked up by the microphone.
Okay.
Do
you understand? In other words,
Yeah.
does the 1144 include the 955 or not?
It's in addition to.
She said it's in addition to.
Jessica, can you come up to the chair by Lisa here so that conversations are being picked up by the mic? Thank you.
The numbers are not combined, or the one number is not coming out of the other number. They are separate numbers. So if you have 207 chiefs scheduled for training, and then you have chiefs 165
Who have already been
who have
trained.
already been trained, you can add those two numbers together, and that's how many chief judges are in the pipeline.
Gotcha.
And the same with the judges assigned. We can add the 141 assigned to the other two columns, and so our totals for how many are currently in the pipeline would be 955 plus 141 plus 1144.
Yeah, I'm sorry, what column were you just looking at?
I bet
total.
that's not the case.
I'm looking at I'm looking at judges trained, judges assigned, and scheduled training. What I'm trying to figure out is, do we have 1,144 people in the pipeline, of whom 955 have been trained, or is it that we have more than 2,000 people in the pipeline, 955 of them have been trained, plus 141 of them have already been assigned?
Plus.
It's all pluses. If it's all pluses, we're in decent shape.
Yes.
Okay.
That's great.
The recruiters have really been working at this election.
Good.
There was a question asked about whether we need Republican judges. I said yes, of course, we always need Republican judges.
Yes.
Do you have any other sort of comments you want to provide for the board on sort of the status of where we are with training or recruitment since we pulled you in here?
Just the returning judge training, most of those classes have been filling up, which is a good sign. So we've been opening them up as soon as they fill up. We're opening new classes to get them in. That's all. So
Are we about where we've been in the past at this time period?
I'd have to look at old numbers, so I
Okay.
can't answer that.
Okay.
I do feel good about where we are.
Okay.
Good.
But you feel good about where you are?
Yes, and I've been here for, I've been doing this for 10 years. So.
You know,
Thank you.
Last
Oh,
Good.
election,
Thank you.
that's
last election, there was a lot of complaint that the Republican judges called here. They were told they don't need them anymore because they are already assigned judges.
I'd like to get their names so I can find
Yes.
out who they talked to, because that's not true.
Okay.
When I get reports like that, I want to know who they talked to, when they talked to them.
Yes,
I want
right,
those details so we can address the situation, because that's not true.
Good for you.
It's just not.
Thank you.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Thank you, Jessica.
Good work. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't know where it is on the agenda, but I did have some questions about the reports on the polling places in the early voting center.
Which that could be addressed now. We're not on the agenda. Jim, do you want to go ahead and talk about Chris's memos now?
It's okay.
You didn't get this?
Okay, so Chris has the polling places. Chris, you want to come up? This is the,
Questions
What?
for a polling place report that she
yeah,
submitted?
is that what you're talking about?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, Chris,
That's what I'm talking about.
you want to join us?
She's grabbing her materials. She'll come up to the chair.
Okay.
Did Janet send it out by email?
No, I put it in the packet today.
Okay, I can't see the one. There you go. There's the copy.
Okay.
Welcome back.
Yes, I have questions. I think it applies to both Rockview and Gaithersburg. I'm less. I mean, I know where Rockview is generally, but I'm less familiar with that polling place. But in both cases, it appears that the recommendation to move the handicap voting parking closer to the door that's closest to the polling place is not being taken. That it seems like we are providing places for people who are going to the polling places to rest, to get from the parking to the polling place, rather than finding parking spaces for them that is closer to where the polling room is. And I guess I hope I'm wrong, but if I'm right, I want to understand the thinking behind that decision, and if I'm wrong, I'd be happy to be wrong.
Okay, let's start with Gaithersburg.
This is
First, I'd like to make a statement about Gaithersburg. It's been a quandary on my part as to why we seemed to have run out of parking at Gaithersburg High School. And I had, when I visited out there this summer, the lady that I should have been speaking with was on vacation, so I'd had a couple calls into her. Today, we received a call from her, and she explained the situation at Gaithersburg. Gaithersburg on the 26th of June was used for several different events, aside from our event, elections. And some of the things that were going on was they had elementary curriculum training that was a couple hundred people. They had ESOL training, which was about 50 attendees. They had a camp, which was about 10 staff, with middle school summer camp. It must have been preparation for middle school type summer camps. That involved some staff. And then there was also permanent 12-month staff that were also using the parking. So with this number, and this time frame was about 7:30 to 3 o'clock. So I'm thinking that there were about 400 adults using the parking that really would have been basically election parking on any other given election day.
Do we have an agreement with the election day polling places like we do with early voting centers?
We have reservations at each polling place saying that we are going to use a particular room, and for most cases that works out on a normal election day where the schools are closed.
Yeah, I was going to say, most schools don't rent out 5 other things on the same day. Are they allowed to, is the question. Because it sounds like this is going to be an issue, it could be an issue at any public school polling place we have.
I foresee that it will be an issue every time we vote in the end of June.
Well, but it's not only the end of
schools-
June, it could be November too.
November seems, and
We're not
I
going to have
see
camp,
that.
we're not going to have camp in November.
I see that possibility.
Right.
But for the most part, it has been historically that the building has just been empty on our November elections.
Okay. But it seems like
And
we aren't,
April.
I think we're legally required to have parking for voters. And if we knew we weren't going to have parking, we would vote somewhere else. Now, obviously, we would prefer not to vote somewhere else. We want to keep going to the places that we've been. But if we knew we weren't going to have parking, we would vote somewhere else. So what can, and I realize this is only one of the issues with Gaithersburg because we haven't even talked about handicap parking yet, but what can we do to assure that parking is available? It sounds like when we reserve a room, we have to reserve a certain number of parking spaces. Either that or we have to talk to the school system and say, hey, when we have an election day, that doesn't just mean we need the room because we need a place for, people need to be able to park to vote there.
And I believe that the school system understands that, and for the most part, that is what occurs. I don't know what happened at this school. This really, to me, was an anomaly. Why all of these events happened on election day.
Have we spoken with the chief operating officer's office about this school?
There was a list of concerns that I had after the primary. We
Okay,
look at all the information.
including this?
Yes.
Okay.
We look at all of the information that we can gather regarding staff that was out, whether it be a roamer or our PPS league people out at these sites reporting back different information, as well as our comment cards and our judges.
Does the school system report back to you as to what they've done about it?
They have the list, and they have assured me that all of the things on their list will be addressed. And this one was on the list.
But when you say will be addressed, does that mean that they're going to make sure that there's adequate parking?
We will be following up on that to make sure that the list is accommodated.
I mean, but the list has to be either no other events at Gaithersburg High School on election day, or an explanation from them as to why parking will not, will be sufficient. I mean, it's not. There's two different ways people can say that they've accommodated something. They can say, "I've addressed all your concerns," or they can say, "Here's what I've done to address all your concerns."
Yes. We're hoping that we can work very closely on each individual situation to make sure that this does not occur again.
Kevin, what's required?
It says in Montgomery County, the County Board of Education shall make available the space and custodial services needed for the proper conduct of elections upon application by the local board.
Doesn't say parking.
Well, it's a space. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's kind of
Right.
vague. What is
Right.
make available for the space and custodial service?
Well,
Right.
in context, Chris, I mean, you were working with the school system on parking questions and concerns at any number of sites, right? I mean, you had summer school and you had...
And when we use the term space, yes, that's all-encompassing.
Right.
When we have conversation about the needs that we need from the facility,
Right.
parking is in the conversation.
Yeah, okay, good.
But
David,
this
David,
one, we
which
just
one
didn't
were you
realize the
particularly
extent
concerned
of
I'm
the
sorry?
conflict.
Which one were you particularly concerned about, the parking?
Gaithersburg. High school.
Some of it was closed off because it was being used for another event? Is that
Well,
what
It's being used.
it sounds like that was context that Chris was giving us. My question was still about the handicap entrance being too far away from the poles.
It might be deemed too far away from the poles, but if everything over at Gaithersburg is totally compliant, what I have suggested is to move additional temporary spaces up by the main entrance, which is handicap compliant, so that we can have additional handicap parking. I went and I looked at the lane, and to move the handicap parking down in front of the cafeteria door is right on a curb. It's where the voters come up a hill, up a small lane, and then around a curb there, if I put handicap parking right there, I feel that it's a hazard. I feel someone stepping out of the car on that into that lane on that curve where people are coming up a hill right around a curve would not necessarily be safe. Where I can put them that's a clear space where there's vision on both sides of the lane is right in front of the handicap access door.
I thought that there was parking on the side of the building that is closest to Boer Park, and an entrance there as well.
There is, but that entrance, if you're talking about as we face the main entrance on the left-hand side, which is kind of lower down.
I believe that's right.
Yeah. When you're facing that, the distance that people would have to come would be much further, and I believe that's where some of our voters were parking on Tuesday, June 26th.
So I guess I'm a little confused then. Where is the polling place within the school?
It's in the cafeteria, and as you're facing the main entrance, it's to the right.
Okay.
You go in a main entrance.
So it's at the opposite end from the end that I'm talking about.
Yes.
Okay.
And the doors into that area go directly into the cafeteria, and they are not there's not a push plate. They'd have to be propped open, and then those doors are right into the cafeteria. And then on a November day especially, or even June 26th with air conditioning, we would degrade the temperature in that room if we were coming and going in directly into that room.
It's just very disappointing if for handicapped people to have, I mean, yes, they can enter through a door that's handicapped accessible, and then they have to walk or they have to get themselves a very significant distance. It's a distance that's significant enough that we want to give them a place to rest on the way. That just seems like it's quite a distance.
Mr. Neiman, I really feel putting temporary handicap parking down by the cafeteria door is difficult with them getting out of the car with traffic coming up along that lane.
Okay. Do we have the same issue in Rockview?
It's a different issue in Rockville. The distance was an issue that the voter noted because we were going in the main entrance.
Is it Rockview Elementary?
Rockview.
It's an elementary
school.
Rockview. But in that instance, I can put temporary parking up by a secondary door. Now, it won't be a handicap door. So there'll have to either be a greeter there or a doorbell or something to make sure that someone with special needs or in a wheelchair rolls up to the door, that they can get the door open. That door is right outside the corridor that leads directly into the polling room. There I don't have an issue with temporary parking and people getting out of their car because it's a more sheltered area. There won't be traffic coming through there. And there's no curb cut there, so we'll have to install a temporary ramp along the curb so a wheelchair can come up over the curb.
Okay. About St. Catherine Labore, your memo said that a meeting was held. When was that meeting?
That meeting with Mr. Hawley was the 26th of July. I will reconfirm that for you, but I'm sure it was the latter part of July.
So it was after our last board meeting.
Yes.
And was anyone there who represented the church in addition to the school?
The Christian educator. He is an employee of St. Catherine's.
Of St. Catherine's, not of Avalon.
Not correct.
Okay. And Kevin, have you been consulted about all of this? Not yet?
No, not yet.
Because when we met last time, the way we concluded the conversation was that you were going to be consulted. My concern there is that any agreement that we have with the school, we don't have an agreement with the school. I mean, we have an oral agreement with the school, but as far as the law is concerned, our agreement is with the church. And so anything that any representations that have been made, we would want to make sure that legally, I would think, we would want to make sure that the church is involved in the conversation, and that Kevin has had a chance to sign off on it, because as a matter of law, the school is just another renter, just like we are.
What we've done within trying to keep the pastor involved is we have copied him on everything that Mr. Hawley, the director of Avalon, has presented to us. We make sure that Father Aguirre is copied on that.
Kevin, would it make sense at the end to have the church sign off somewhere on whatever it is that we need to make sure that we're all on the same page?
It may. I'll work with Chris to go ahead and get this addressed in the next 2 weeks.
Okay. And has anyone given thought also, I mean, obviously there's concerns about how the school affects us, but there's also concerns about how we affect the school. And I'm wondering if there's been any discussion of the security issues caused by bringing lots of people into the school, and whether there's going to be a way to keep our voters out of the school.
The school is very aware that we're going to be there, that we will have a significant presence for the 8-10 days. They have made arrangements that the students won't come through that part of the building. In a normal school day, the students have access to the corridor that goes by the Claridge room to come from the parking area that we use and walk through the building to the school. They will not have that access during those 8 days, as well as the back area that actually accesses the actual school buildings will be marked inaccessible for voters. Now, and Mr. Hawley is very engaged and very anxious to have a firm plan so that everyone involved is aware of the program, and he is engaging his staff so that his staff also will be diligent and make sure that the security of the students is of high priority.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I guess my only question on that facility is the handicap area. Does that impact at all the area where the children are?
We've discussed that, and no, they won't be in that area at all. That's dedicated to early voting.
You mean the Claridge room? Is that what you meant, Mary Ann?
Pardon me?
You meant the Claridge room?
Yes, but the handicap comes around in the back
around
there.
Around the back, yeah.
You know, and so I didn't know whether that was also going to be off limits for the school at that time, and it answer is yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. President, do you want to ask Dolly Kildee, who works the precinct at Gaithersburg, to comment about the Gaithersburg situation?
Yeah, Dolly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, there were a few things that were mentioned. One is I only had a chance to glance at this right now. But anyway, one was the number of events that were being held at the school. There may have been a lot of people coming, but they were not coming up. There's also the lower entrance where maybe a lot of people at the parking lot where people were going in, because electioneering during the day, we had very few people who were not there to vote, trying to come in that door. But one of the things also, the problem described as having the handicap parking along the curb, and you have cars coming up around a curb. That was a curve. That was not happening because no cars were coming in that area, which is the way they came in. The school is new, so the first year that we had voting there, the cars, the voting, everybody was directed on that side entrance that brings you up to the level where the cafeteria and the main entrance there are. That was not, nobody was going in there this time. which was the problem. I mean, even if you want to have only handicap parking up there, they don't have to park along the curb. They can park in the little parking lot. The parking lot was empty most of the day. People were parking, whoever was coming. Obviously, the voters were all directed down in the lower parking lot, and that's where people they were pushing wheelchairs and walkers up. It's a pretty much of a grade to be doing that, to get up to the voting. When they could have made the turn before, it's really hard to describe if you're not really familiar with it, but they could have made a turn before that would take them up to the upper level.
Is that signage you're talking about, or is it something else?
Yeah, what's the solution, Don?
Who directed
To me, the solution would be now to have a handicap parking sign at the access that takes you up to the upper level. It parks you in front of the cafeteria, which is not the entrance, but it's still level to walk down to the entrance.
So that's the place, Chris, where you believe that there's an issue with having parking there because of it being on a curve?
It's the lane that's somewhat, this parking lot, I kind of look at it as an oval, a circle. This lane accesses all of that parking. It comes up. Now, there are, like Ms. Kildee says, there's access up to the parking. It could be, yes, that some people won't use that lane to come around the circle to find their parking. But I still feel that it's unsafe for people to open their car doors and having to manipulate a walker or a wheelchair in that particular area, to me, is cloistered. It very close. I think it would still be better to move them in a more open area.
So our choice is between a place where we have to deal with car doors opening and cars going by versus an uphill climb for people.
Well,
No.
No.
Okay.
I shouldn't speak for Ms. Kildee. Do you want to answer it?
Well, what I'm suggesting is instead of when you come up this curve, go around this way.
Right.
You go to the end, and that's where I think you're suggesting that
Yes.
the handicap parking be. But before that is the parking lot, so you don't have to be in the curve. You can go along the curve. You can be over in this little park. It's just a small park.
Maybe we need
But it has handicap.
a picture or a map to
Yeah, it's hard to explain.
Here you are.
Oh. All I had to
Google
do
Maps
was,
the rescue.
all I had to do was say it, right? And it appeared. Okay, so
So this is the entrance, and this is the activity center. So
okay,
So here, you're coming off 355 here.
right.
Right now, for this past election, you came to the end here and went back in here.
Okay.
And this is all upgrade to here where
And
you go in.
and the cafeteria's over here.
Cafeteria's here.
Okay.
So the way it was the first year is you come here, and this was for all voters at that time. You would come in here, do this loop here, and park in here. So that's where the handicap parking would be now. Then people still have just a level. They just go on the left side.
And your concern, Chris, is that if you're parked in here and you open your door, people can hit you when you're coming by this way?
Now, this is very straightforward here, and I think people, if they were using this circle to traverse through the parking lot, they would see cars here. Here's where the entrance, this is the cafeteria. Here's where the entrance is, right into the cafeteria. If we tried to put cars down here, I feel coming up around this circle, people might not be so visible.
Oh, you're saying if you put them along this drive here?
Yeah.
What about if we put them in this parking lot?
Well, we can do that, but I think that they're safe if they're up on this end. I just feel uncomfortable about putting them right here in front of that door.
Okay.
Or we can make additional handicap spaces there. But what will happen is, now it's level here, so we don't have to worry about curb cuts here. But coming from here, if we park people here, they'll have to come down to make the curb through over the curb cut right
Okay.
here.
So if I
So,
want to show, it's very helpful to see.
and the issue with temporary rest areas,
Right.
that has always been a recommendation to help people where the paths might be longer than the average.
I think it's better than not having them if they have to go that distance.
Well, what we
It's just a question of whether they have to go that distance. It's an indicator of the distance.
what we have decided, well, not that great. It's less than the qualified number.
Okay.
But we've decided, since we've had these questions arise, that we're going to create a rest area in every school. We're going to have the judges, whether it is a very short distance, we're going to have signage and have chairs set out in the corridor with a sign that says voter rest area here. A voter might pass a bank of chairs in a corridor, not thinking that we have placed them there for their accommodation. So we're going to sign every one of them. And then addressing Ms. Kilby's issue about where the voters normally come versus where they went this last June. I don't know what was happening. I think because the school, was expecting a large group of people, they were ushering or trying to focus the traffic in that area where we don't really want them to park. We want them to park up in that upper circle where they normally park. So better signage out there about where they're to approach the parking is our best measure.
So if the handicap spaces were in that upper parking lot, like we just talked about, that works for you as long as it's not in the drive.
Right.
Does that work for you?
Yes, that's what worked the first time.
Okay.
Let's do it.
I really think that this June election was an anomaly because of the activity that was going on in the building.
Now, does it also make sense to have a sign there that says voter parking or something?
Yes. We have sometimes trouble with the signs getting lost in the campaigning, but we will put out a
So we have a solution.
Great.
Yeah, good.
Very good.
Yeah, Google Maps was a big help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dolly.
Thank you.
Okay, so the last thing on our open meeting, if you notice the dates for the next meeting is October 15th, but we're not sure we're going to be sworn in as a Board of Canvassers at 2.
Correct. We're just going to verify that when the board was sworn in prior to the primary election, that they weren't sworn in as the primary board of canvassers versus an overall board of canvassers.
It happens that I cannot be here at 2 on that day, although I can be here later than that. So if it turns out that we are sworn in that day, I can either get sworn in separately, or if the swearing in can be a little bit later, I can then make
We'll verify. I'll have an email into.
And you got election day. Now, our meeting in November was supposed to be, I think, the 19th.
Mm-hmm.
But Margaret suggests, and it's a good suggestion, we move it to the 26th so we can have our meeting and certify the election. Because
when is Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving is the 22nd. So the
22nd.
So the 26th is the Monday after Thanksgiving instead
so
of the Monday before Thanksgiving.
The county executive and the council get sworn in the first week in December.
Yes.
So we've got to do that. And disregard...
If we're done.
Yeah, right. That's right.
Yeah.
Disregard the tentatives in the parens.
I just wanted to confirm again that the board was willing and still on track to meet every third Monday of the month.
Yeah,
so that's
except for January and February.
And November.
Correct. Well, yes, that's these dates.
Right.
Okay. So, I'm sorry. So disregard the tentative for November 26th.
All the tentatives.
So in other words, we're meeting in December, is what you're saying?
No. November 26th is
definite.
Cross out.
We are no longer meeting on November 19th.
Correct.
Okay. December 10th, still tentative?
Well, let's see where we are with this election.
So do you want to leave it tentative? It's always.
Yeah.
Why are we not meeting on the 19th?
Because we're going to certify on the 26th.
We'll
We're gonna
just
do-
meet on
we're
the
gonna do both.
26th and
In
also
other words-
certify.
So you, in other words,
In other words, when
there
instead
were
of
going to be
meeting,
two different meetings?
well, we were
Right.
supposed to meet on the
Well, are we-
19th as a board.
Yeah.
But we're not going to be ready to certify on the
Until the
19th.
26th.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to do both.
And when did you say Thanksgiving is?
Well, it's
22nd.
that that's a bit of a problem if people are traveling that Monday.
If you're traveling on Monday, then that is a problem.
Well, nobody in their right mind travels on Sunday after Thanksgiving.
I'm not sure anyone in the right mind travels on Thanksgiving, period.
So December 10th, we'll keep that as a tentative. Okay. All right, so now
Would you rather do the Tuesday?
well, we've got to do two things now. We've got to go to the Board of Canvassers
I don't know
and
what I'm doing.
Well, we
yet,
just
but
want to
my
also
daughter and I are
review
talking
the
about
two
going
dates
away
for the
Thanksgiving.
public testing on October 19th.
I'm sorry, say that again, please.
Public testing on October 19th at 10 a.m.
you only need two of us, right?
I was talking to Margaret. Do we even need? I don't know. She just wanted to see who was going to be able to attend.
Which date was this?
October 19th at 10 a.m. for the public testing. This was in Margaret's report.
I don't know if I can.
Yeah,
I have to look at my
I
calendar.
do
That's
not
a
know.
Friday, right? Yeah.
Do not know.
Can you send this? We'll have to get back to you.
Okay.
My recollection is that you
What
only
day of the
need
week
two
is
board
that?
members.
Friday.
That's
Yeah,
right.
well, I can do it.
Okay.
What time?
10
a.m.
How long does it last?
hour.
I'll have to get that.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll get
And,
that.
and you don't know how many of us you need?
Two.
Two.
And that only lasts an
Okay.
hour.
An hour. Yeah.
Thank you.
You did it last time, Jackie. I think.
I know I did.
So I don't have to worry about that
And
one,
then we
right?
have
Somebody
the,
else's term.
well, the November 1st, just so you know, that you'll have to attend the supply verification. That's usually at the close of early voting. You come here first, we do the supply verification bag check, and then you guys go to close the early voting center.
We'll get a reminder on that, right?
And we're going to do it. We changed the time somewhat this last time. We're going to do it
4:30?
the same time we did it this last time.
4:30?
Yeah, I think it
What
was
we have?
better. I think before that we ran into traffic issues.
Yeah, we
Four-
did.
so
Yeah.
4:30.
What time is it on November 1st?
4:30.
Well, I thought we just said we ran into
November
traffic.
1st.
No, that was before that. It was.
Later. It
4:30.
used to be later, I
It
think.
used to be. It used to be later than 4:30.
Oh, okay.
4:30.
4:30. November 1st, 4:30. October 19th, 10 a.m. And we'll get back to you.
Okay.
And the
4:30.
26th, you're keeping for now?
Yes,
And it is a firm.
that's yeah.
And the December 10th is
That's
staying on
tentative.
for now? Tentative.
That's a tentative. Yeah. Okay, so we have to go into executive session. So
We
we
need
want
to-
to do Board of
Why don't we
Canvassers.
do Board of Canvassers?
3 minutes.
We need to adjourn this.
All right, so is there a motion to adjourn?
Now adjourn.
No,
To
good.
recess, you're going to have to go back into executive session. Need a motion to recess
Okay.
Go to executive session.
to go into the Board of
I
Canvassers.
move. I
Second?
move, Lisa.
Okay.
Go to
Second.
executive.
Okay,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And we,
How
yeah,
many
so now
minutes
we're
can we
convening
do?
as a
Huh?
How
Board of
many minutes
Canvassers.
can we do?
You didn't-
And we have a quorum.
Yeah.
So the purpose of this Board of Canvassers is to approval of a set of minutes, correct?
Right.
Approval of set of minutes and to reject 43 absentee ballots that are on time.
Okay. So we
They're
do these,
really undone.
want to do these one at a time,
Yeah,
these
one at a
minutes?
time. Let's do absentee first.
Okay.
Uh,
Is there a motion to approve the
I
2018,
move that we approve that.
the 2018 gubernatorial primary absentee one canvass?
Second.
Any discussion?
This is not absentee two canvas, is that right?
Absentee
This is
one.
one.
Absentee one, okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
No one opposed?
Mr. President, there are changes to absentee 2 and the provisional. I believe I inadvertently left Alex's name off the attendees, so that would be an amendment to those.
As amended.
It was amended, right? This is absentee two.
Correct.
Okay, is there a motion to approve
I move.
2018 gubernatorial primary absentee two canvass with the amendment?
I move.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
No one opposed?
Provisional.
Is there a motion to approve the 2018 gubernatorial primary provisional canvass?
I move.
We got with an amendment too?
Yes.
With amendment?
I move.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
No one opposed? Okay. Now we're going to do together the July 20 and 21, 2018 recount of Democratic contest for House of Delegates Legislative District 16. Is there a motion?
I move.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
I'm sorry, I just want to confirm I'm getting 2 seconds. I'm getting Jackie and Mary Ann at the
Oh.
same time.
Take Mary Ann.
Please. It's sort of nice to have 2 different parties.
Okay.
And just so it's clear for the record, those are technically as amended because Alan's suggestion about putting the election totals, the vote totals, were added to the minutes that were distributed to the board, consistent with, I think I sent an email out Saturday or Sunday saying that Alan's changes would be incorporated.
So that, July 20 and 21st, we just approved with the amendments.
Yes.
Okay.
And the same would apply to the county executive office.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the July 23rd, 2018 recount for the Democratic contest for Montgomery County Executive?
I move.
Is there a second?
Second.
So who moved?
Just go ahead, whoever, doesn't matter.
Who moved and who seconded? You got that?
I got a Jackie. I got a Jackie first, but I got a Mary Ann.
Mary Ann
and Naheed.
Second, Mary Ann. All those in favor?
Aye.
No one opposed. And the July 25th, 2018 Board of Canvassers meeting, was that amended too?
No, no changes.
No changes?
I move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So all those are the minutes. Now, you say there are absentee ballots that we have to...
And you all can look at them, but as you know, the requirement is that they have to be received by the Board of Elections by the 10 o'clock on the Friday, the second Friday after the election. These obviously are well past when they had to be returned by statute, so they all need to be rejected. And in the interest of time, it may make sense just to make a collective motion to move the rejected 43 absentee ballots as presented.
Are they from overseas or?
Yeah, I'm just curious as to the postmarks on them.
Well, some of them were actually signed, like in the month of August. We're still getting them. They're finding them. They're actually signing them, and they're postmarked.
France, web delivery.
Web delivery, that means they didn't vote till later.
Right, but I mean, but when they're arriving this late, are they postmarked this late, or were they postmarked on time and still arrived this late?
That's what by web, I can't.
Yeah.
This is postmarked July 10th.
July 10th.
July 10th would have been on time.
Yeah.
No, the postmark would have been on time, but if it arrived on July 10th, it would have been on time. Not quite?
No.
Oh, right, it was like July 6th, right?
Yeah.
Okay, never
It
mind.
has to be June 25th.
Right,
2 weeks. 2 weeks.
right. I'm just curious as to whether people actually, like, mail it on time and then it takes 3 months to get to us.
This one was received by the board on August 27th,
That's for sure.
July 16th, July 23. I can go on.
Okay.
Permanent campaign. Why?
I'd like to make a motion
I move, yes.
that we accept all 40.
No, that we
No.
reject.
All of the
I should say 43.
absentees that came, all the votes that came too late. What was it? How many?
43 untimely absentees.
43 untimely absentees.
Was there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. No one opposed? So they're all rejected. And I think that concludes the business of the Board of Canvassers.
So we can adjourn?
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
We'll go to
Are we
executive session.
adjourning or recessing?
No, we're adjourning the
Okay.
canvassers.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn the Board of Canvassers?
I move.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Mr. President, I move to reconvene the Board of Elections regular meeting that was temporarily recessed while we were serving at the Board of Canvassers.
Is there a second?
Go to the second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And you need a motion to go into executive session.
Mr. President, I
Good
move
seeing
that
everybody.
we now go into executive session.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
You're awesome.
Second.
Thank you, Barbara.
Okay, now we're back into, do we have to make a motion? We're back in open session?
Yeah, I move we accept what we discussed in the executive session.
To approve the confidential voter.
Correct.
Confidential vote.
Second.
All those in favor?
Right.
Aye. No one opposed? Okay, we made good time today. So you'll keep us abreast on the dates, Lisa?
Yes, I'll
Good.
send the email out.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.